Joining us now is Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, an organization that you should absolutely support. Tom Fitton testified in front of a grand jury. The whole thing is so confusing to me. Tom, welcome to the program. We've known each other for quite some time. Tom, I do not understand why you were, basically told to testify in front of this grand jury. What prompted this? What do you have to possibly do with the Mar-a-Lago document case or January 6th? I don't get it.
Well, Charlie, you've been around a long time. What do you think prompted it?
Well, I think you're the most powerful nonprofit on the right that is challenging these cockroaches. I'll use other words, but we're FCC regulated right now. And I think that you're in the universe, so they just want to try to loop you in, make you spend a bunch of money on lawyers and preps, distract, and see if they could try to make you stumble. That's my working theory.
That's right, and we could put a legal reason on it, but I think you're exactly right. And specifically, we have been highlighting the abuse of power by the Justice Department in targeting Trump on this records fakery that they made up and manufactured to justify a raid on his home and other abuses, because we had been involved in a similar case where they took, the Justice Department, the courts, and the archives took the exact opposite position to protect Bill Clinton. And so as soon as this happened, we said, oh, well, isn't this interesting? They did a 180. The prior legal position of the Justice Department has been that a president who has documents after he leaves the Oval Office can't be questioned about them. They're presumptively personal, and no one can second guess him. And that was the position of the Justice Department in court, and that was the position of the court that had the most persuasive case on this. A case, by the way, we lost. So we're mighty sensitive about it. And of course, we sued the Justice Department, the FBI, and the archives for records about their abuse of Trump. And so in November, I get a knock at the door. I had just gotten back from skin cancer surgery, literally just gotten back, like an hour or two before. It's at night. And guess what it was? It was two young FBI agents serving me a subpoena, evidently on this Mar-a-Lago records fiasco. But just before I went to the grand jury, ultimately, they said, "Oh, we want to talk to him for a few minutes on, the election issues, the January 6th issue," and it turned out that was the bulk of the questioning. But in the end, Carly, it was a lot of noise signifying nothing. They argued with me for 4 hours, harassed me with questions, tried to intimidate me, and I wasn't intimidated. But it was an outrageous abuse of power and of the grand jury process to go after the number one critic of the Justice Department, dare I say.
Yeah, of course, but this is what they do, right? I mean, this is why Bannon's going to jail, O'Keefe is currently out, Tucker's being sidelined. It's a massive muzzle operation. Anybody that's effective right now is being scheduled for cancellation off the chessboard. But Tom, were you allowed to have an attorney present during this?
It was interesting. So after the subpoena, you have to go get a criminal attorney. And, after subpoenas issued, they talked to the Justice Department. And they were going to let me come in under a proffer, which is you just go in and meet informally with the attorneys. And I'm only a witness. I'm not a subject or a target. And they said, okay. And then we tried to get a time. I was sick, as I told you. And then all of a sudden, it turns out it was right in the middle of the whole Biden fiasco that was going on behind the scenes where he got caught with documents. Remember, they hid that from us at the time. They said, oh, no, we're going to reassert the subpoena. You have to show up at the grand jury, which means you're right. I can't have my attorney with me at the grand jury. They're in a room outside of it. And if there's an issue, I can go and talk to them. But it was me versus three prosecutors.
Wait, while you're in a grand jury, you're not allowed to have an attorney next to you. Is that?
No.
How is that remotely constitutional? I've never heard of such a thing.
It's a fair question. It's just that's the way it's done.
Is the attorney listening to the conversation or in the other room? Or is the attorney totally disconnected from it?
I can say I want to go consult my attorney and they let me step out for a minute or two.
No, but this is important because, Tom, we know what this is all about. We're not trusting of these people. They wanted to try to have you misremember one thing, and then they indict you for lying to a grand jury.
Yeah, and that's the game. But we spend most of the time arguing about politics and First Amendment protected activity, about the Clinton sock drawer case, the case I referenced earlier, about electors and and I told them, and this is quite specific, I told them, by the way, there was a plan by Democrats to engage in civil insurrection if Trump won the election. And I was very much concerned about that and what the preparations were for that violence that they were signaling and planning. Indeed, I read in the New York Times that John Podesta had war-gamed a scenario where states would secede from the Union, left-wing states would secede from the Union unless they got the Electoral College results they wanted. And that's what I was concerned about, and I was wondering why no one had been investigating that. So, that was evidence before the grand jury. Maybe they'll follow up on it, Charlie.
Right. But then all of a sudden you come in under false pretenses, and then January 6th gets thrown on you. Is that correct?
Yeah, they only spent about an hour talking to me about this Mar-a-Lago fiasco, and then 3 hours arguing with me about emails and tweets related to the election dispute. And as I'm talking to them about it, I'm like, why? First of all, why am I being questioned about my tweets? and other First Amendment protected activity. It was just pure politics. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. It was like being on some sort of nightmarish MSNBC program. But that's the approach the prosecutors took with me.
So they asked you what you had for lunch at the White House. Is that reporting correct?
So, I went in, we had lunch with him once, and I told him something. They wanted to know his reaction. I'm like, I don't remember what his reaction was. I mean, he's, my view is unless you're a monkey climbing up and down the walls, no one's really going to remember much of a reaction to comments you make. And then they said, well, did you have lunch with him another time? I said, well, I don't remember. I said, no, I did, because I remembered what we ate, right? And they're like, oh, so you remember what you eat at lunch, but not how he reacted? And I thought, this is just so outrageous. It's just so outrageous and so juvenile and petty, but also dangerous because they're, suggesting you're, having a false failure to remember in front of a grand jury, which would be a crime. So that's the game they were playing with the head of the country's #1 government watchdog organization. It'd be like bringing in, to be clear, the head of the ACLU or the NAACP. But this Justice Department doesn't give a rat's tail. And we're now in the era of a regime, not an administration.
Tom, was this in Florida or D.C.?
It was up here in D.C.
But I'm told the grand jury. Okay, but the charges might be filed against Trump in Florida. Is that true?
Yeah, that's what the reporting is. The problem that they have, going back to the law, which I hope is supposed to apply, is that the analysis of the law prior to Trump had been that the president has deference as to how he handles records, classified or presidential, and that if he takes them with him, they're presumptively his and personal. So rather than try to deal with that, they're pretending, well, it's national defense information, according to reports, and maybe they can get around it that way by, saying he doesn't have prerogatives that he has related to classified information. And of course, that's just bunk too, because all the records he had were initially covered by the Presidential Records Act. And if he designates them as presidential or personal, and that designation doesn't have to be official, it can be informal in the sense he just takes them and uses them. And in this case of the president, if he keeps them after he leaves office, they're presumptively personal. That covers any record the government has given him in the White House, including national defense information. And it's not a statutory issue, it's a constitutional issue. He's commander in chief. He uses the records as he sees fit.
So, Tom, how do you think this is going to play out? I mean,
they're going to indict him.
Okay.
I think they're going to indict him. I think they're going to indict him in Fulton County, too. And the left is hoping one of the three stick, and he's forced to campaign from jail. I mean, this is a serious threat to our Republican form of government, Charles. And our friends here in Washington, I don't need to tell you, are whistling past the graveyard.
Oh, yeah,
whistling
that's right.
past the graveyard with this attack on our structure of government, our ability to govern ourselves, our right to select our own president, and not have the offices of the Justice Department and the FBI be used by a political party to rig an election.
And most, not most, I'd say a fair amount of Republicans in D.C. are thrilled about this. They're like, finally, we can get rid of this Trump guy. Finally, this cancer. Finally, right, Tom? In D.C., they're like, finally, finally, finally. That's how many of them feel about it.
Well, you see some of his opponents in the campaign.
Yep, Chris
disturbingly are trying to justify this abuse of him. And, you know, all those men know better, and women. And they should know if he isn't the nominee, they'll try to jail them too.
They think they're untouchable. They think that they've made a deal with the intel agencies, and they might be right. Some of them, the way
that may be true. They may sign the deal with the devil too. But it doesn't. In the end, though, it's up to us. And this isn't because Trump I like personally. He's a friend, and I would dare say. But it's not about his policies or whether he should be president or not. It's about whether or not is he going to be protected under our law, or are all the rules going to be thrown out? And when you throw out all the rules because you hate Trump, it means the rules that govern us as a constitutional republic in terms of our structure of government. It means our core civil rights, including our First Amendment right to challenge an election and participate in our system without fear of punishment, being thrown in jail. So all of those rules that are being abused against Trump, and I saw it firsthand, I'm a witness, I'm a victim. If they're not protecting Trump, you think the rest of us are going to be safe? I can tell you firsthand, we're not.
They're coming after every single one of us, one by one. Tom Fitton, thanks so much. God bless you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.